Everybody have a copy? Okay, if you're a little warm, we can open the windows. I don't know. Actually, a little cold is good for sitting meditation because it keeps your body naturally alert. You don't get so soporific, and even after Thanksgiving, it brings you have to raise your chi up a little bit. And in doing that, there's a little pressure to find how you can naturally stay warm. The secret is not a lot of clothes, although you should start with just enough clothes to take the edge off. But the real secret is with everything else. As soon as your mind attains oneness, not only do most of your problems seem either inconsequential or they evaporate, but also you'll find yourself getting warm. This is the inner furnace. So it's not special food or ginseng or having these little heaters on inside of you that they wear at football games. All you have to do is bring your body, your breath, and your breathing and your concentration to a single point, and you will change and adjust your body to be just right. It won't be too cold, it won't be too warm. And the same thing can happen in very hot climates, but it's a little harder, at least for me, in hot climates because cooling down is less easy. When I was visiting in India, I didn't feel so bad because in the ancient times, they used to dig these underground caves. And so I think we were in Sarnath, and we went to visit, and the meditation places are below the ground where it's cooler. So it's pretty interesting. You walk down these stairs and you go down, you're actually under the ground, you're under the earth, and there are these little cubicles along the wall, about the size of those panels there, carved space, and you just crawl in and kind of sit in the dirt there, and it's actually remarkably cool. And one of the other techniques they use, I didn't find it worked for me, but people claim they take a hollow bamboo, piece of hollow bamboo, and they just hold it here in their hands, and somehow I don't know, it's probably quite scientific. It's not magical. It's scientific somehow. I guess bamboo is somehow with the hollow. It takes the heat from the hands, which goes down and then out the tube and cools off. So, but we don't pass out bamboo in November here. We pass out blankets. So anyways, but the other thing is keep to the middle way here. If you go too strong one way or the other, you can get sick. So in other words, if you bundle up too much, you'll start getting really heavy and you'll fall asleep. And if you don't wear enough, you can actually get sick. So find your own middle way. There's no set middle way. The middle way is between the two extremes for you. Anyhow. Let's go into the text tonight. Any questions? We have a smaller group tonight because it's a holiday and people are out shopping for things they don't need, which is the spirit of the day. That being said, any questions on meditation people wanted to ask? I know we've had the preliminaries and now we're into it for quite a while. Anything coming up? I'm noticing that everybody's sitting pretty straight. Not too much restlessness. Yes.
So, I'm curious about the 24/7 aspects of cultivation. Specifically this. Okay, this was a question that came to me at a gas station recently, where I'm busy pumping gas. I'm in the middle of everyday activities. But then for a moment, I sort of became aware of what my mind was doing, and actually things stopped for a second. There wasn't a particular thought going through my head. And so at that point, I'm thinking, okay, what's a cultivator to do at this point? I'm supposed to attend to the here and now. The here and now is kind of boring. I'm pumping gas. Is there something that is a positive thing to do at that moment, given that I'm not going to be in a 45-minute sit? I'm going to be back sucked into everyday life in a few seconds, and yet there's this little opening, and I was curious what best to do with it.
I'm smiling because a little opening, wasted time, a missed opportunity. How can I make the most of the moment? Well, it's just a funny thought. Almost like not wanting to make the most of the moment makes the most of the moment, but wanting to make the most of the moment turns it into something else. Because then you're afraid, you're kind of worried that the moment's passing, you haven't made the most of it. I think the 24/7 means by letting your mind be unattached, clinging to nothing, you're in the most of the moment all the time. If you understand what I mean. So if you're in any moment, you do what needs to be done. So when you say 24/7, if you are a teacher, you teach. You don't, quote, enter samadhi in the classroom and pull out of your immediate situation. So attending to the here and now means that you do what's appropriate to your position, to your karma, to your situation in life. You're raising children, then attending to the here and now, and 24/7 cultivation means you attend to those little living beings, because that's your field of awakening at that moment. If you're in the hospital and you're a physician, it means full attention to everything that needs attending to without making any, you don't err because of a selfish moment, an indulgent moment. You don't come in drunk, so that you're not attending. I mean, it's very practical what it's talking about. Whatever is appropriate to your situation, you do well. And in doing that well, you enter one kind of samadhi. It's a samadhi of appropriateness. It's a samadhi of doing what needs to be done. There's all kinds of different samadhis, but basically they all have the same thing, that you are not driven by selfishness, by greed, by self-seeking, any kind of agenda other than your commitment and responsibilities to what's there. So if you're in nature, what's your commitment and responsibilities? It isn't to square away the birds and the fishes and everything and set the waves straight. It's just like, be there. It's cool. You don't have to do anything. But wanting to make something at that moment in nature then turns nature into a zone of affliction.
Well,
I see this.
I wanted to avoid something else because I knew that a bunch of other thoughts were about to come crowding in that were probably not even thoughts I should be entertaining.
At the gas pump.
Right.
Yeah, see, but you could enter somebody at the gas pump and just go, and the gas would be pouring out, and people would be getting upset and so forth. But that's thinking ahead then. You're worried about other thoughts coming in. So then that moment that you're there is already not there, but anticipating the absence of there, which would, you see how, this is called the monkey mind. It's really incredible how it works. As soon as it has a moment of stillness, it goes, oh, wow, should I record this? Should I keep it? What's going to happen when it's gone? And the moment of stillness just evaporates in that experience. You got to have a sense of humor at this point. Really, just to watch how the monkey mind both wants and resists stillness, its own comment. Stillness doesn't mean the absence of activity. See, this is the funny thing. Doing what you're doing there with no other thoughts, with no other disturbances, without any looking backward and forward, is appropriate to filling your gas tank at that moment. This doesn't sound transcendental, and it's not necessarily. But we often go wrong in these very simple ways. I remember my teacher gave a wonderful talk. He says, really, a lot of cultivation consists of just doing the simple things right. And it's like, what? Like eating, sleeping, and wearing clothes. Huh? Everybody says, oh, yeah, it's like, give me some dharma here, man. And he said, okay, like sleeping. How many of you really know how to sleep? What? How many of you, when it's time to go to sleep, just go to sleep, rest and sleep, and then wake up when it's time to wake up, rested and full and ready to go? Everybody's like, well, I'm going to do that soon, but it's like I toss and turn, I get on my computer, I play a puzzle, then I wake up in the middle of the night, and I take a sleeping pill, and I go to sleep, but then I don't wake up on time, so then I have to take some coffee and some speed to get through and it's like just that simple thing of sleeping. And he says, now how about eating? Oh yeah, well, how many of you are worried about too much weight, too much fat? In the discussion yesterday, I went to someone's place for Thanksgiving. Everybody was talking about their weight. I mean, and so there's this, the host put all of this wonderful food, and people, oh my God, I'm guilty, I shouldn't eat whatever, you know. And then, I shouldn't have seconds, but I really want them, and they go back. And then people had these, and the woman I was sitting next to, young and healthy, but she had this on her app, on her phone, a calorie counter thing. And I mean, this was calorie counter, and she said, well, I'm up to, let's see, if I calculate, I could have one, you know, but it's Thanksgiving, you know. And then she actually could take pictures of the food, and it would give her the calorie count on there. So instead of listening to herself and saying, when is enough, when it's sufficient, it's the calorie counter thing. And it makes a funny song when she goes over, and then she pushes it down. And the other person was next to me worried, I'm working too hard, I used to weigh more, everybody says I've lost weight, I don't know what to, it was around the table. Here's like just a time to celebrate and enjoy. Nobody was really enjoying it, and if they were enjoying it, they were feeling guilty because they know enjoyment precedes the fall, right? So tomorrow I have to go to the gym. You see, I can eat a lot more. I have 30 minutes at the gym. And then I can eat this because 30 minutes of da-da-da, and it's like, what do you do at the gym? Well, you sleep? No, I walk. You walk at the gym. You go to a gym to walk. Now, my mother would think this was totally absurd. You buy a membership in a gym and you pay to walk. She says, why don't you just leave your car at home and walk? No, can't do that. But then she said, I did that, but then I started to, I said, what? Well, there's these older women that come to the gym, and they work out for longer than 30 minutes. And I keep thinking, if I'm only working out for 30 minutes and they're older, I have to stay up with them. And so I go over the 30 minutes. But then I feel, could I eat more food or not? So it's like on and on and on. That's food, sleep, and then clothes. Okay, now how many people, come on, I'm sorry to be a damper on the economy. How many people went out today or online and actually bought clothes they have no need of? Right? Because they were on half price. They were quarter price. They're on sale, right? It's just absurd. We get them, we hold them, and then we think, well, maybe I'll pass them on. If we get the right colors, we give them to the monks and the nuns as donations, right? I told you the story of my sister. She would go out at this time, get all this stuff, and there was no room left in the house for anything, and then she'd have this charitable moment where she'd take it all to Goodwill or St. Vincent de Paul's. And then 3 months later, she'd get a little sad because life was dull and boring in the winter in Wisconsin, nothing to go on. And what do? The men go out and shoot animals, and the women hunt. Stores. They go shopping. And so she would go to Goodwill, St. Vincent de Paul, and get all these really cute clothes. And she'd bring them home, and she'd say, boy, that looks familiar. It was the same clothes she had given. So this is how the monkey mind works. It's really humorous if you look at it, but it's also frustrating. So anyhow, that's a simple answer to your question. Don't make it too hard. Don't make it too hard. It really isn't that hard. One thing that people do when they really start to cultivate is there's an interest to simplify their activities, not because simplified activities in and of themselves are virtuous. This is not the point. You can do a lot. My teacher was very busy, very active. I mean, he outran us in every way. And yet in that action, there was always stillness, a pervading stillness. Me, when I was sitting doing nothing, I wasn't still. I was busy because the mind was busy. But that being said, sometimes you simplify in order to catch your mind's false busyness. So by reducing clothes and food and getting sleep in order, just doing those little things helps you get a stability where you can see how much you're driven by excess, fears of deficiency, and so forth. Monasteries in many ways are sort of arenas where people can go to get life down to such basics, such elemental basics, so that the activity of the mind's constant monkey wanting, seeking, grabbing stands in bold relief against that background. And then that's the beginning point. Once you can see that, then you can begin to take on activities, other things, without being driven. In other words, they're coming from a choice, from a commitment, from a vow perhaps, instead of being impulsive, nervous energy to do and create because you're afraid of being quiet and alone with yourself and so on and so forth. So every moment is a place to cultivate. And you just, you saw the monkey early. The monkey's coming this year, Chinese New Year, but your monkey arrived early, so. But as Rumi says, when that comes, welcome it. Welcome every little movement of mind, every little sort of failing and bad habit, every little affliction. Welcome them in like they're guests. Take them into your home because they all came as messengers from someplace to take you to someplace else. So it's like when these things arise, laughter's good. That's a welcoming in. But so is a sort of, acknowledgement, this is an opportunity to see something. Pumping gas there at the station, I saw my mind go here. And it's no different than watching your mind go here or there in the meditation hall. And you can see it at a Thanksgiving dinner. You can see it in the mall. You can see it brushing your teeth in the morning. It's like the mind is constantly busy, doing more than it has to, and sometimes not enough. And so getting to that point where it's just enough, that's 24/7. That's I Ching Samme, the single practice samadhi. It sounds simple. It's only 4 characters. I Ching Samme, single practice samadhi. And most people think it means just reciting the Buddha's name all the time. I just have a single practice samadhi. Om Tofo, Om Tofo, Om Tofo. But it means in every activity of your life, you're really right on. You're really centered, you're really balanced, and you're doing just what's supposed to be done and not more and not less. Tricky. Okay, good question. Any more? Which really wasn't a question about meditation, but it was. It wasn't about sitting, it's about... No more? Okay. Sorry I didn't make you want to go shopping, but... Okay, so we're on page 42. We're reaching the end of this chapter called Doubts and Questions. And remember, the whole thing started out with Prefect Hui asking questions he had about the most standard Buddhist practices. When we get to this point, we see that the Sixth Patriarch hasn't thrown out any of these practices, whether it's the making of offerings or meditation or Pure Land practice. He simply reconfigures or retranslates them back to what he calls mind ground practice, direct teaching. And so here we are now. He finishes this explanation on the Pure Land and says, basically, this is all coming from your own mind and your own person. He begins with this long analogy. And then it says, right in the middle, hearing this explanation, the assembly clearly recognized their essential nature. They all bowed and in near unison exclaimed, how fine, may all living beings of the Dharma realm who hear this simultaneously awaken. So here, I don't think we could read this to mean everybody. It's just really hard to imagine that everybody, because any Dharma assembly I've been in, there's always someone who's asleep. So now, all bowed in unison explained how fine, and then that person woke up and said, yeah, how fine, what happened? But mostly everybody was really paying attention. Why did they have such a response? I think because they never thought of this before. It never really, this seems so obvious to us. We've been going in this text, but I'll tell you, this explanation, this mind ground teaching, is so rare, so hard to come upon. And I think that was their experience. They never thought that their own persons, their own bodies, minds, and emotions were in fact all that you need to become fully awakened, to become a Buddha.
Is it because of the clarity of the explanation?
Oh, for sure, I think it's the clarity, and you're right, he's unusually clear and straightforward. I think, but it's also the content. It's the clarity, but the content is so unexpected. We so think that the answer is out there with somebody else, with someone else, in some other place, in some other locale, in some other time. It's in the future that we never is what we thought it would be when we get there, or it's in some glorious past that we can never return to, or if we try to return to it, it's not what it was. And so I think the clarity of it is one, but the content of it too. And I think the third part, maybe if I could, I'm just thinking, when I first heard this, I was both delighted and almost in shock to think that it was so straightforward, so evident. And then I thought, huh, what isn't like this? I eat, I wear clothes, I sleep, all this I do, I study, I read, I learn. You know, it's not like anything came to me as a sort of gift. And so this would be the same, but I think also, besides the clarity and besides the content, I think is the methodology. He's actually given them now a methodology, which the other two wouldn't make. If it was clear and the content was you are your own persons can do this, he actually gave them in this last passage an actual methodology. In other words, a practical guide that you could begin to work on this. Remember, he goes back and he says, look, I'm going to give the analogy. It's the 6 sense organs. The eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind are the stuff of awakening. These are your good and wise advisors. These are your dharma friends. These are the tools you need. It's like everybody has those. But how you use them makes all the difference. Well, that's pretty interesting. I mean, right away he cuts through that this is something special, mystical, beyond the reach of the ordinary. He's saying it's right within your own body and mind that you do this. Wow. And he says, here's how you do it. You attend to it in this way. It produces wholesomeness, kindness, compassion, goodness, and wisdom. And you use it in this way, and it's the opposite. But fundamentally, the 6 sense organs in a Buddha and Bodhisattva and us are not different. They're absolutely the same. So there's the practical method that he's outlined. Now, to continue that theme, I think we go on to read the text. He's actually driving this point home. And I get to this part in the text, and there's a little, I don't know, it's like he's not completely trusting them. You know, I've seen this. They all bow, and they're near it. Oh, may all being simultaneously awaken. And he says, I'm not going to let you off that easily without saying a little more about what you need to do, huh? No, it's not enough that you're all excited and you've heard a wonderful teaching and you got your hands together. Maybe something about wonderful, I got to get out of here quick. Because, you know, now the tough part comes, applying it. And so I think the way he goes in his narrative here is to drive it right back home again and saying, okay, don't let your excitement wane. You know, it's easy to be excited. I'm here, assembly's here, you've all had a wonderful experience, it's a pure place, and so forth. And when you leave here, what's going to happen? How's your resolve going to hold up with the first test or the second test? So then he goes on, he said, good and wise friends, if you wish to cultivate, you can do it at home. You do not have to be in a monastery. If you cultivate at home, you're like the person of the East whose mind is good. Conversely, being in a monastery but not cultivating is like the person of the West whose mind harbors evil. Just purify your mind, that is the West of your essential nature. So next step he goes to, somebody might be thinking, oh, well, if I want to really practice this, I'd have to ordain and enter the monastery. And he says, you've missed my teaching if you think that. Because it's mind, ground. It's taught, everything is coming from this mind. Not this place, but this mind. And then he says, he will say a little more about how you do that. But he's saying, if you can cultivate, and now he doesn't mean at home. Okay? You say, well, I rent, so, you know, I can't do it. Or I'm a nomad, I live in my car, I don't have a home, No. Okay, so it's metaphors. At home is in contrast to leaving home. These are the language that you use for to leave home or to go forth. Pravraj in Sanskrit or Chuja in Chinese means to not just leave your house, because a lot of people have left home in the 21st century, okay? Their houses have left them, and go the mortgage, foreclosure, whatever. That doesn't count. It means to leave an identity and attachment to a place as being you and what belongs to you. It means the home of the material, and I don't say material possessions, material cravings, material longing where you set up yourself in the material things, but it also means to leave the home of klesha, leave the home of your affliction. So it's an internal leaving of a misorientation. It's returning to your essential nature. That's what it means to leave home, to leave the place where you're attached. And then your true home is a home that's nowhere dwelling. It's no dwelling home. Okay, so here he's contrasting the leaving home with at home, but he means not at home, he means anywhere, even at the gas pump. Okay, so when he says you don't have to be at home, it means you can be anywhere to do this. Any country, any place, any elevation, any grouping, you can cultivate this because, as he said earlier, this true mind, this direct mind, this undeviating mind is the Bodhimanda. The Bodhimanda is not a place. Sacred space is defined by what you do with your body, mouth, and mind. You create sacred space by your karma, and you create profane space by your karma as well. So the profane and sacred are not two different places any more than afflictions and bodhi are two different substances, but they're different functions or different creations of consciousness. So then, that's why he goes on, he says, this east and west, remember the west was the pure land, the east was the profane land. That's how he was using this dichotomy. So he says, if you can cultivate anywhere, meaning he says at home, you're like the person of the East who's in the world of supposedly samsara and defilement and yet has turned this in by consciousness into a pure space. Conversely, he says, if you're in the pure land, supposedly, but your mind harbors evil, then you're not there. And so he's saying if you're in a monastery and you're really not cultivating, it's not necessarily a pure land. The monastery doesn't make you pure. The mind makes the monastery a pure place. So if people in the monastery are pure, that's a pure place. If people someplace else are pure, that's a pure place. So this is really, really quite critical. Again, he's taking it from externals only to internal. Everything is made from this mind alone. We understand this. You know, when you say, I get together, what makes a family or a home? Is it the house? Or is it the blood relationships that are there? No. It's not. That can be a tormented place. That can be a place that's really hell. So just having kinship or bloodlines in some house doesn't make this a home experience. On the other hand, you can be in a station wagon with a group of people that is your family, just sort of rolling along, singing a song with not much at all, and really feel hearth, home, togetherness, and whatnot. So again, we know this from a very common way. You know, they say home is where the heart is, but it is to some extent really true. So if your heart's in the right place, and your consciousness is in the right place, your affinities, your friendships, your home can be in the most unexpected places. And conversely, where you expect to find it, sometimes it's really not there. It's totally absent. So this is a human realization we have, and you say, just extend that. Just extend that. What's the best job? Because this was part of the discussion last night at dinner. You know, what do you do? Well, I kill mice and see if they, or I give them bacteria, and then I see, well, how long it took them to die and how much bacteria, and and I make gadgets and widgets and whatnot. What do you do? Well, I kind of teach Buddhism. Oh, that's weird. Never thought of that. That's an occupation? And so how much money do you make? Well, really, how can you be happy on that? But you seem to be. So there's, it's like a puzzle. So when you say, what's the best job? What is the best job? What's the best job?
To serve people, to make people happy.
So, well, you got to make something. I mean, you have to have something. But that's what all the studies show. If you have something, in other words, enough, and you're really happy, that's the best job. Because adding more on top of that basic need actually disproportionately turns it around and becomes not so much fulfilling. This isn't a Buddhist study. This is a longitudinal study that was done at MIT, as a matter of fact. Yeah. They have some social scientists at MIT, and these social scientists were asking the question, what makes up for contentment, human happiness? And they thought more money. So the more money you have, the more happy you are. And they actually found no. When they said, well, less money, it was no. Just right money is the point. So when you have your basic needs met, the essentials of food, clothing, so on and so forth, not too much, not too little, that optimizes. Going beyond that, it's inversely proportional. The more you add beyond that, the less happiness, contentment that's reported. And the next thing is harmonious, close relationships with people. And the third thing is doing something meaningful that you feel like I've contributed to the well-being of the planet, the world today. And then finally, funny, some kind of spiritual practice. Those are the four things. So if you ask what's a bad job, well, it's engineering, it's this, it's this. No, it isn't. It's actually where your vocation and avocation are the same. Okay? So vocation is what you're called to do. Avocation is what you want to do. I guess I was talking about this. There's a famous poem by Robert Frost. Not Jack, Robert. And Jack's different. Sorry. Robert Frost. Everybody know who Robert Frost is? Okay, he was a poet laureate in the United States. He actually gave a poem on Kennedy's inauguration. What was the name of that poem? Now, don't look it up on your Google. Come on. The Gift Outright, isn't that it? Oh, I don't know. Check it out later. It's a wonderful poem. He wrote it for Kennedy's inauguration. But he has this wonderful poem where a scholar, a man of books and learning, is out in his yard splitting wood for the winter. And the woodcutter is coming by with his axe and things, and he's looking over at this guy and he's thinking, yeah, that's my job. That's how I make my living. And he's doing it for fun. So he's taking away my living by doing this. And so they're looking at each other. And then as he passes, the scholar then looks and sees him pass and realizes, I took his job away. And I don't do this for a living, I do it for sort of leisure. And then he has a reflection, or the poet has a reflection. The best in life is to make your vocation what you are doing for a living, and your avocation what you are doing for living. Not for a living, but for living, to make them one. This is the happiest person. So anyhow, in this sense, if you're going for what is best or optimal, it has to do with this harmony of your mind, your body, your spirit, and so on and so forth. That's where this one's going. Sorry to digress, but... So Prefect Way further asked, how can this be practiced at home? Please teach us. So again, you could say he's asking for clarification. On the other hand, it seems like he still doesn't get it. I mean, it's almost kind of an inescapable thing. He's maybe just being polite here and he's saying, could you clarify and give us some real pointers here? Or is he saying it's so unusual for him to think that he could do this at home, he can't think how he could turn his house, his relationships, his job into a place of cultivation. It's very interesting. I mean, it doesn't occur. People think, I need to go to a retreat. I need to take time off from all these things, go to retreat to cultivate. And then at the end of the retreat, it's like, oh gosh, I have to go back. There it all goes. And I didn't get enlightened this time. Damn. You know. But what he's saying in his non-duality is one place is all place, one time is all time, and any place is a bodhimanda if your mind's right. So that's 24/7. That's the I Ching Sun Mei again. So he says, I will then recite an unconditioned verse for you. As long as you practice in accord with it, you will always be as if by my side. However, if you do not cultivate, then what benefit in your search for the way is the shaving of your head and taking ordination? So he's both driving. His answer seems to be, Prefect Way still a little confused that in his mind, the cultivators of the way are people who leave home and go into the monastery. And then the people that don't do that are really not cultivators of the way. They may support that endeavor, or they may completely renounce it, or turn their backs on it, or only do it a couple days a week, or a week every year or two. But what the Sixth Patriarch said, he's putting them on the hot seat. He's saying, look, it's not that way. This life is short. Take advantage of it. You know, you think you're going to cultivate in the future? You think, well, I'm going to do all this stuff, and then when I'm 60 or 65, then I'm going to go cultivate. You say, no, 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 no. Right? That mind is really off. That's no longer the direct mind. The direct mind is I do it now. Why do I do it now? Because what is there worth doing? What else besides this is important? And so he's asking kind of the question, don't structure this into some dichotomy at home and in the monastery. And he drives this point home. He says, if you practice this, what I'm going to say to you, then you're always as if by my side. So you want to say, well, leaving the home might be okay, but if you leave home to have at your side this wise teacher, wow, that's the best. That's really the monastery. I mean, in the sense of the best form of the monastery is not this elaborate building with all this Gothic architecture and great smelling incense and everything. I mean, if you're really leaving home and you've got a spirit, having that good and wise advisor by your side is the best. It's your dharma friend in the best sense. And that person can instruct you very specifically on the gateways to liberation, your emotions, your psychological states, your flaws and habits that you don't even see, with a kind but sometimes scolding manner. These things can be pried out and brought forward, and then you're really in a great monastery, but you're still by the side of the teacher. He's saying you don't even need that, because if you practice, that is the teacher. So it's like the Buddha was saying when they said the Buddha's about to die, pass on, and let me see, who asked the question? It's Shariputra, right? Who's going to be our teacher when you're gone? And he says, Charlie. No, he says, no, he says, take the Dharma Vinaya as your teaching. In other words, take this teaching of how to practice and practice as your teacher, not anything else. And then you'll always have a teacher. But if you don't take it to your heart and really do it, even if you're in the presence of the Buddha himself, it'll be like water off a duck's back to you. It will not go in. It will not go in. Whereas if you're really a sponge-like in your desire to have it, one drop of water will penetrate and really be powerful. So here he's saying, what benefit is this going and shaving your head, putting on the robes, going through all of this, if you don't shave your heart? Let me use this. You don't tonsure your mind, okay? So he's completely taking it away. Now, he would say, if you really do this, then you even have perhaps even more leverage if you then sincerely cultivate, because the monastery life does offer you some advantages for way, not needing to make a living in the usual way. And that freedom can be a freedom, or it can be a curse. You see, leisure is not necessarily liberating. Oops, really? Yeah, using your leisure wisely is liberating. But having leisure without a mind for the way can actually turn into be an impediment. The toys, the diversions, they draw you down. They make you heavy. They make you fatigue. There's a world weariness that comes from too much leisure. It's really funny. Anyhow, so we go on here. Now he gives the verse. Verses are sometimes kind of encapsulation statements, but they're also mnemonic devices. And by mnemonic, I mean they're aids to memory, because they're stated so succinctly, you can call them up. And so when you're working on text with memorization, often the verse sections are the easiest to remember, because they have a rhythm and a cadence to them, and also they have a content to them that goes in. And they're easier to call. There's something about rhythm and cadence and music that appeals to us. Come on, if I ask you, it's easier to remember songs and what do we call them? Rhymes, like nursery rhymes. Hickory dickory dock, the mouse went up the clock. But try to remember Kant. You don't. If I can say, quote me a line from Kant. No. But hickory dickory dock we remember. So there's something in our nature that is harmonious with rhythm. Now, what this is about, I don't know. We could all speculate. But often, the verses that they're done in have something that allows us to retain it in memory, and also to shave it down to its essentials. So poetry is a wonderful way of conveying thoughts and feelings, because they're shaved down to the essential language that can get it across. and there's no extra words. Sometimes like writing haiku, if you would take up that practice, is really a good training of the mind, because it forces you to condense into very succinct statements, very profound and moving things. So I used to have a friend, and when we traveled, we would take turns creating haikus. So he would give the first line, and then I would come up with the second line, and then he would come up with the third line. And this is better than, what's these games you play in the car? There's all these car games you play, but doing matching couplets is kind of, doing haiku is very interesting. Anyhow, so here's the verse, he's going to give it, and we'll just start it tonight. Because, okay, so now having said that, our translation is not rhythmic cadence poetry. I'm sorry. Okay, just for a start. Okay, so Yihuan, you find the first couple lines in Chinese while I'm reading the English. The mind regulated and subdued, why toil following rules? Your steps straight and true, what use in sitting meditation? That's not hickory dickory dock. Okay, so now read the Chinese and let's see if we got the rhythm cadence.
心平和朗持戒，心直和用修禅。
Okay, similar cadence there. Do the next two.
恩泽孝养父母，义则上下相连。
You see, and we didn't do that. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, first line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, second line. And none of these have that. So this is waiting for our Buddhist Robert Frost. We didn't fulfill that this time. However, let's go at least. I think it's more memorable this way, even in English, although it doesn't have the power that the Chinese does. But let's look at this for content, too. The first line, the mind regulated and subdued, why toil following rules? Excuse me. The rules referred to here is a translation of jia, or the precepts. So the rules here are referring to the moral rules of, at least at the very base of what we call pancha shila, which are the 5 precepts, pancha being 5 precepts. So the rules don't mean just general rules. This is talking about the rules of taking formal vows, moral vows, to not kill, not to steal, not to engage in sexual misconduct, not to lie, deceive, and not to take intoxicants. And by the way, the first 4 are considered to be violations of the nature because they substantially change your orientation. This is like a little bit like breaking the glass in your house. Okay, the killing, the stealing, the sexual misconduct, and the lying is an offense that strikes at your nature. The 5th one is not. The taking of alcohol, for example, is not a nature violation. It's in there because the taking of alcohol easily turns into a clouding over of awareness. And the clouding over of awareness then mutes your innate sensibility to discern, and therefore it's compromised. So it's a contributing factor, but it's not a factor in and of itself. So when he's saying mind regulated and subdued, the 5th one with alcohol doesn't regulate and subdue the mind. I know you think, I drink that, I feel, ooh. But what happens is the mind also goes off kilter. Now, I don't believe it. Well, when you go out, just sort of talk to any cop and say, late on Friday night here, do you notice regulated and subdued minds indulging in alcohol? Or do you get calls for there's a fight, there's a shooting, there's a brawl, blah, blah, blah? Okay? So we know, regulation and subdued and murking up consciousness don't go hand in hand. Anyhow, so he's saying here, the purpose of the precept, the purpose of Shila, is to regulate and subdue the mind, to bring it into resonance with the true nature, to bring it into resonance so that the nature is, and your mind are completely aligned in that trueness, what he calls the trueness. Okay? When they're there, they're so true, there's no need to then think about what should I do that's good or what should I not do that's bad. that's already a calculated thought because the nature is so responsive and so clear and so immediate. It doesn't have to calculate that. It knows, if you will, naturally, immediately, spontaneously. Because any slight deviation, even of a thought, so twists the nature that you can feel it in your system. It's like a little bomb going off. It's like stubbing your toe. It's like cutting yourself. You don't have to think, gee, I cut myself. You know immediately, you instinctively know when you cut yourself, especially if it's a deep cut. You feel, okay, me and my avocado, right? I got the avocado. I take the tip of the knife, and I'm going to get that stone out of there, and I miss. And I hit the hand with the knife. And when that knife goes in, if it's really sharp, something goes in your system, up your spine, and you feel that shock in your system, right? Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay. Whoa. Sorry to make it so graphic, but it's real. Or you're going, I remember the first time I had a straight edge razor. Now, you know what a straight edge is? Not those little safety razors you buy, the plastic ones. This is the one you open up. It's a long straight edge, and you sharpen it, and you hold it like this, and you shave. And I was a young man, and I thought, now I'll do my sideburns. Ha! And I felt this, that was wrong. And I thought, no damage done, though. I looked at the side of the mirror, and then suddenly a slight line of red appeared, and it got deeper, and the blood started flowing. It was such a quick, clean cut that it took the blood a while to think like, oh, what happened here? There's a hole. And then out it poured. So what I'm suggesting is when you're true, when you're in your nature, movements away from that are just as pronounced and dramatic. You don't have to think and calculate. And that's why he's saying, when your mind, you don't have to toil following the rules. There aren't any rules because your nature is ruled naturally. This is called precepting your nature. You're no longer holding the precepts. And the precepts are no longer holding you. They're one and the same. In fact, they're one and the same so much that there aren't any precepts. You don't need the precepts because you don't need an external mechanism to subdue and hold you in. It's naturally there. That's what this means. And then he says your steps straight and true, and we put in quotation marks steps because it's not referring to your walking. It's referring to your karmic actions of body, speech, and mind. Xing. These actions, your intentional actions, what you say, what you think, and what you do are your steps. It is, in fact, the walking of your life in all these dimensions. When they are straight and true, you don't necessarily need to sit in meditation because the point of meditation is to get insight and a handle onto your karma and to bring your karma into such an alliance that it's always in samadhi. This is called the natures in samadhi. You're not entering samadhi and coming out. Your very nature's in samadhi, and therefore, 24/7, yi sing san mei, your steps are straight and true. There's no place then that you don't have to go to meditation to recalibrate or to reconnect with this true nature because you never leave it. Or as he say, earlier he says in the city analogy, the king doesn't depart, the nature doesn't leave, and therefore because it doesn't depart, everything is centered and together. When it departs, then you have to sit in meditation, so to catch it again. But this is the first two lines. We're out of time tonight. We'll pick up on the rest of this later. And we may finish this chapter next week. I don't promise, but we may, unless we digress. Oh, we. There I go, being generous with my faults, including you all in them. Okay, any final questions on any of this for tonight? Everybody's online shopping there, not even. Even he's online shopping. Okay, announcements for this weekend?
Nothing special. The same schedule like usual. Tomorrow we have 7:30 Alaska lecture. Next year from Australia.
Hey, were there any animals last time?
No, we had unfortunately some difficulties last Saturday, and hopefully tomorrow.
Oh, you didn't connect last week?
No.
Ah, okay. Oh, okay. So we'll do the transference in English. wisdom and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world